I'm excited to talk about virtual power plants today. This is number 2 in our series of more macro topics, if you will. Typically, I discuss kind of the nitty-gritty on residential solutions, but after the Winter Storm Uri happened in Texas, I thought, well, let's take some time and discuss more broad-scale grid issues. And last month we talked about microgrids. Today we're going to talk about virtual power plants. Without further ado. Again, my name is Madeline and I'm the energy storage manager for Soligent. I have been working in solar plus storage for the last over 4 years, since early 2016. And it's been a wild ride on the solar coaster. My goal at Soligent is to support installers, homeowners, any kind of person to get a handle on energy storage and how solar is enhanced by adding batteries to a system. And I try to do this by staying in touch with our manufacturer partners to make sure that your end customer and you as an installer understand how different solutions may fit better for a given application or a given type of customer. So I am really here just to be an educational resource to guide you through the solar plus storage world. So we're going to talk a little bit about what a virtual power plant is, and virtual power plants are often acronymed as a VPP. So what's a VPP? When can you use it? Why is it a good thing? You know, what value does a VPP add to the grid? What value does it add to your customer? Then we'll review a few different solutions that Soligent provides, the products that you can use to deploy these types of systems, and then different programs that utilities have launched to take advantage of aggregation. So last month we talked about microgrids, and I want to briefly discuss a few elements of a microgrid and how they relate and are different from a VPP. So microgrids are similar in the sense that they aggregate many distributed energy resources, and by aggregating, they can act as a single entity. With microgrids, however, they're localized. So in our little case, we have our 5 houses, and for a microgrid, they would have to be 5 houses close together with a common geography. And this is specifically with the intention of islanding. So it has many off-grid features. With a microgrid, you want to be able to island your small localized grid. Shifting gears to virtual power plants, we're still aggregating a group of distributed energy resources and a group of, let's say, load control devices. But when you aggregate them, they can span over a much larger geographical area. So you could have a VPP over an entire utility, independent of if the distributed energy resources are near to each other. And with a VPP, again, we can participate in more grid services beyond just emergency services. So if we look at this example, we have our houses as individual units. But when I aggregate them, I want them to all be controlled and connect and work together. So each has their own power generation source. They have their own panels. They have their own storage devices with a battery in their home. And they have their own load profile. So they have their own needs of their own. That's if they are all individual. When there's no control mechanism or monitor between the grid and these sites, we're not able to get all of the value out of these systems. But when we're able to aggregate these all together and have them operate collectively as a single resource, it enhances their value. So when can we do this? I'll start with an apartment complex example. This is the Soleil Lofts in Utah. You may have heard of this as a very prominent installation. And something that's really important on virtual power plants specifically is there are a lot of stakeholders, and there's a lot of collaboration between the real estate developer, the utility, the energy management designer. So in this case, this is a Rocky Mountain Power utility project with the Wasatch Group real estate developer. And the Soleil Lofts incorporated 5.2 megawatts of rooftop solar, 12.6 megawatt hours of storage, and 150 vehicle chargers over the course of 600 apartment units. And this was a project completed in 2019. So really the sky is the limit here if we're able to have, a single apartment complex accomplishing 5 megawatts and 12 megawatt hours of storage, really remarkable. But again, the collaboration between this apartment unit and the Rocky Mountain Power utility is essential. So that's why I want to highlight that again. We can also work with single family homes. So this is another Sonnen project, and Mandalay Homes is another common, or they've done a couple projects with Sonnen. They are a eco-green home builder. So this is another project via Sonnen, and this is 2,900 houses for this planned community. So really, really impressive scale in terms of this. And we have 11.6 megawatts and 23 megawatt hours of capacity. So just to give you a little bit of perspective, if you look at 11 megawatts and 23 megawatt hours, this is roughly a 2-hour system. You could kind of consider this a 2-hour system. And then we can kind of span a lot of different projects for a mixed portfolio. So we could be looking at single family homes, apartments, industrial, as long as they're all controlled under the same software platform, the type of building doesn't really matter. We just need to be able to aggregate and communicate between the different loads, the different distributed energy resources, storage, power creation, what have you. So project number 3 is a VPP in 2 parts, and this is going to accomplish 3,000 residential apartments with solar and Sonnen Eco Links. This just began in September of 2020, and this should be completed by the end of this year. This project is the largest of the 3 and will contain 24 megawatts with 60 megawatt hours of storage. The first component to be done on this project is a 417 unit Heron Point apartment community, and that's the apartment community in Fresno. So why do we care about these? Why is aggregating systems so important? And let's talk about why it's good for the end customer. Demand response programs are a way for you to earn more money as a battery holder. So a utility would create a demand response program because peak demand is a time when energy and both power prices go up. So the utility wants to be able to cut that demand a little bit. Let's enable our customers to enroll in a demand response program to be able to cut their own loads on a home by home basis. Demand charge reduction on a similar method is more of a everyday type method. So demand response is kind of a utility saying, we're having an event, please participate. Demand charge reduction is, I want my residential demand charges to be lowered all the time. So this is going to be a more frequently taken advantage of revenue stream. And then the last thing I want to kind of mention is the way we're upgrading our home power is we're able to do more by participating in a virtual power plant than just participate by ourselves, have our energy storage to maybe use self-consumption, and reduce the needs from a generator if we're experiencing a planned power shutoff. So you're really enabling your house to have more flexibility, more capabilities, more grid services by participating in some sort of virtual power plant than just by islanding yourself, essentially. So that's why it's good for the end user. For the utility, there is so much untapped potential here. Um, Grid services is sort of the umbrella of how VPPs can add value. And there are numerous grid services that are required by power producers to support reliable grid operations and make sure that there's strong, stable electricity to meet demand. And when we think of a grid, energy and capacity is sort of our general understanding of what a grid provides. And energy and capacity are what is the majority of the costs of a grid system. However, reliability services are kind of the next step of value add to the grid. And reliability services include reserves, voltage support or voltage stabilization, and black start capabilities. So how are these important and why are these capable of VPPs? So let's go into that a little bit. So reserves are a way for scaling new capacity to be added to a system. So there are operating reserves, which includes frequency response, which is the millisecond, kind of very, very quickly needing to dispatch energy. We need our frequency response reserves to be able to be deployed very quickly. Regulating reserves, contingency reserves, and ramping reserves are kind of the next in line to providing more power beyond our typical energy and capacity. So if we look at VPPs today, voltage support and frequency response are our most common value streams because the grid operators understand that value. But there are more grid services that are not being taken advantage of yet. So the sky's sort of the limit here. From a capacity perspective, an obvious way to save money is avoiding a substation upgrade. So there was an example in Australia where a utility was able to save 1.6 million US dollars by adding a VPP to avoid a substation upgrade. Great solution. And then avoiding load shedding. Load shedding is the euphemism for brownouts. Adding a VPP element and saying, hey, let's get all of our existing energy customers to participate in load shedding or participate in a VPP can keep you from needing to cut your customers off, which is always the goal. How can we participate? What does Soligent have that can accomplish the virtual power plant features? Sonnen, kind of where we've seen the successes already. The EcoLinks is their premium product. It is the one that is the best suited to participate in virtual power plants. So let's talk a little bit about why the EcoLinks is different from other inverters. And we can do that by talking about why are virtual power plants different from just a regular hybrid inverter. We need the inverters to talk to each other. We need the inverters to communicate amongst each other and to be able to receive grid signals. So if the grid says, weather event is coming, I need you to listen to me and deploy energy back to the grid when I tell you to. The EcoLinks has the software capable of making that, of understanding those commands. So the EcoLinks integrates with leading home automation brands in order to tell the loads in your home to react. So let's say you have a Nest and there's going to be a weather event, then you can have your Sonnen system say, hey, Nest, weather event's coming. Let's pre-cool. Let's pre-cool the house now so that if we get a heat wave, we don't have to ramp on our air conditioner during the peak of that heat wave. For the EcoLinks, we have from 10 to 20 kilowatt hours of capacity. And I think the beauty in having, let's say, a 20 kilowatt hour unit in your home, if you only want to be using 10 kilowatt hours of backup, you can essentially provide that peak capacity to allow the grid operators to use, and then still have 10 kilowatt hours for yourself. So that's something you always want to kind of consider is, as a homeowner, I don't want to give all of my storage capacity to the whim of the utility. I still want to be able to have some for myself if I really need to. The EcoLynx is well suited for virtual power plants because it has a very long warranty. It's 15 years, 15,000 cycles, which is really helpful for designing kind of a utility program that you want to last or provide revenue for over 10 years, which, many other warranties are 10 years. So a few of the other features of this is the smart configurable backup, smart weather forecasting, which I think the weather forecasting is really valuable for this specific application, smart demand control and load management, and configurable user needs. So pre-cooling is an example of that. You can power down less critical loads to increase energy efficiency if there's a peak period. So the EcoLynx really has lots of ways to help the user act in ways that supports the grid. Generac. Generac is our new VPP solution. So you may be familiar that in 2020, last year in October, Generac acquired Enbala, and Enbala is a virtual power plant software provider. So let's back up and give a little more Generac context. Generac has been around for decades as a home standby solution. They sell generators. Then in 2019, Generac, the generator company, purchased Pika and Neurio. So Pika was a hybrid inverter storage solution, and Neurio was a home energy management software provider. So with the third acquisition of Enbala, we can now have the virtual power plant software, this real-time control and optimization for these distributed energy resources, communicate with the Neurio, which is sort of the brains of the Generac power cell equipment, and that can make these resources more valuable, making them flexible to communicate with the grid and adapt to the end user's needs. So Enbala is enabling the power cell to have all of these automated features. This was kind of a match made in heaven because Generac has had a major presence in the residential and commercial backup space. With Enbala's utility relationship, it really is going to help the kind of back to our original topic of we need all parties to participate. We want all of these different levels of communication and automation in order to make these systems work properly. So how can I participate in a VPP right now? And there are some options for you. Green Mountain Power is in Vermont. And coincidentally, I learned this while creating this PowerPoint. Green Mountain Power is the first B Corp for a utility. So kudos to you, Green Mountain Power. So let's talk a little bit about how the Bring Your Own Device programs works. And I'm going to just kind of talk through the illustrations on the left. So what is an energy peak? And I really like this diagram because if you look across kind of the x-axis, the dots indicate kilowatts, the peak amount of kilowatts you're using. But if you look at the whole little orange area underneath the curve, that total is going to be your peak kilowatt hours, the sum of the kilowatts over time. So peaks are instances when we have the highest amount of demand, and typically utilities are witnessing, and utilities experience this kind of on a massive scale, and individual homes experience this also on a smaller scale, is typically in the summer between, let's say, 4 and 7 p.m. In our instance, for this example, 5 p.m. in July may be a peak experienced time. So energy peaks strain the grid, but also require the energy you're getting to potentially come from a peaker plant. So in order to reduce demand saves money and saves the environment, reducing demand is kind of our goal all the time. So Green Mountain Power is saying, okay, take your battery in your house and enable us to reduce our demand. So by joining the Bring Your Own Device, you can use your stored battery and potentially your EV charger to help offset the needs of the other Green Mountain Power users during these critical times. So if you enroll, you can enroll for up to 10 years. Well, let's keep going. How does the program work? You can enroll up to 10 years. And if we use an example, I just kind of came up with this. If we have a 3 kilowatt hour battery we want to use for 3 hours, we would save $2,500 approximately. And if we have a 4 kilowatt hour storage system that we want to use for 4 hours, we would save approximately $3,800. So you can save up to $10,000 for a given system, approximately. And for solutions that Soligent provides that you can buy today, Sonnen and Generac participate in the Bring Your Own Device program. Connected Solutions is the name of this demand response program that both Eversource and National Grid utilities are participating in. So who are they? Eversource and National Grid are prominent providers in New England, and you can participate in Connected Solutions to save some money. In this case, Enphase and Charge, in addition to Generac, PowerCell, and Sonnen, can participate as a solution. Summer can have between 30 and 60 events. So it's very clear that the summertime in almost all of our grid instances in the United States, summer is where the grid sees the most strain. And I think air conditioners are a big contributor to this. So the peak events, oh, sorry for the dog bark. Peak events can occur up to 30 to 60 times in the summer and 5 times in the winter. And typically this is between 2 and 7 p.m. Again, what we can expect for our typical peak amount of time. A typical home battery that can contribute, let's say 5 kilowatts on a given event, can earn $1,100 for the summer and roughly $250 for the winter season. Last but not least, Portland General Electric, and this is a newer program. So Portland General Electric is a Portland, Oregon area utility, and they have recently come out with multiple storage initiatives, actually, and I want to talk a little bit about the other ones. So PGE, not to be confused with PG&E, filed a plan with their regulators, the Oregon Public Utility Commission, to come up with 39 megawatts of energy storage. And the 39 megawatts are going to be distributed over a number of different types of storage methods, and from largest to smallest, or actually, I guess they're all different sizes. The city of Beaverton, which is a suburb of Portland, has a large-scale 20 megawatt battery microgrid solution. Another program that they're also doing is a retrofit battery for an existing 1.7 megawatt array. And then there's also going to be a 5 megawatt transmission connected storage device, which sounds very cool. But the one I want to talk about mostly, which is the most relevant to us, is this smart battery pilot. And this is for up to 525 homes, and there are still slots available for residential behind the meter batteries that are managed by PGE to establish a residential storage program. And this is going to be kind of one of their test projects. So the way that this works is you can, earn your $20 a month if you charge from solar, but you don't have to if you want to just have your battery system charging from the grid. And for a different type of pilot, up to 200 smart grid test bed customers can also reap additional rebates if they want to install a battery. So this program is really catered to anyone that is in the PGE region, because also 25 income qualified customers can get a $5,000 instant rebate for the installation. So definitely would recommend checking this out. Full disclosure, recently, if you Google PGE Smart Battery Pilot, some of those URLs have been broken, but you can still find information on this program. So if you live in a PGE region, get in touch with them, call them so that you can get all the most recent information, because I want to make sure that everyone learns what they need to learn about that program. And if you think about the different utility solutions, they are kind of similar. You know, you install your solar or your solar plus storage on your own. You register your solution with your utility provider, and then you experience a couple events and you get paid kind of when these events occur. So not a bad deal. And that's all I have for you. Thanks very much. Jamie, are there any questions?
No questions.
Okay.
You can wait a little bit. Maybe someone wants to type anything in the Q&A box down below. Feel free.
Sure.
But thanks, Madeline. This was a great overview of the programs. Like Madeline said, there's a lot of programs out there. They're robust. So we went ahead and linked all the utility programs we spoke about today, and we'll go ahead and send that out to you, those who attended. But other than that, yeah, thank you all for joining. We really do appreciate it.
And the last thing I want to add is for, those three are examples of existing utility solutions. However, as an installer, or if you're an installer and you have a relationship with a developer, you can get in touch with your utility and kind of create your own virtual power plant. So there's nothing limiting a VPP from getting started other than a little bit of legwork and creativity.
Yeah, it's a great way to get back in touch with customers too, is what I was realizing, especially with the Portland Electric. Say you've already installed a storage system with a customer, but maybe they're not taking the benefits of this program, and it's a good way to touch base and ensure that they apply to possibly get these benefits. So
absolutely.
All right, everybody. Thank you once again. Thank you, Madeline.
Appreciate it.